Hi folks, in this video we're going to be doing everyone's favourite Thundercat, which is of course Snarf. Now I have printed this little fella in 1/8 scale, so he's pretty small, because obviously he's a small character anyway. Really easy to print. He's only in 3 parts, head, body and tail, and then of course the base is the 4th separate part. So he's been cleaned up, he's been primered in grey, and he is all ready to go. I used water washable resin. He's printed out hollow and he is looking rather snazzy. So this should be a fairly quick paint job, I would have thought. I don't think it's going to be anything too difficult, so let's get cracking. With the pieces broken down in their component parts, I want to start you with the red. So take a red of your choice. I happen to be using Mephiston red, and it's just a case of painting in all the red of the fur. He's also got a red nose, and he's also got red behind the backs of his ears, so make sure to paint that in as well. Using some red and some black, I've mixed up a very dark red wash, and I'm going to apply this all over those red parts we've just done, and this is just going to run to the recess and darken down a little bit, give it a bit more variety in colour. Now with that red-black wash all dried, this is what you're left with. So some nice detailing in there now. So what I'm going to do is dry brush across the whole thing. I'm going to take some Bloody Red by Vallejo, which is a nice bright fire engine red. And of course with a dry brush the trick is to take off as much paint as you need to on a paper towel, and then just run the bristles even across the model. Try and sort of go in a circular motion, and you'll begin to see almost immediately the paint left behind, just bringing up the colour, highlighting those edges. I'm now going to do a second dry brush with orange using Troll Slayer Orange from Citadel. So again, exactly like we just did, just running across, catching the edges of the fur, and just brightening that up. Now I've just quickly put him back together just so I can take a look and make sure that the colours are working, and I'm happy if I've got even coverage. You can see as well how those different reds and oranges I've used has really sort of given slight variations in the colour. You can see how the dry brushing, I've also done it across the nose and across the ears, focusing on sort of the tips on the edges, so you can see slightly sort of darker and then lighter as it goes onto the tips. So you can achieve some pretty good effects with dry brushing. It all just depends, you know, how much paint on your brush, how you're applying it, and yeah, just have fun with it really. So he isn't just red, he's also red and yellow. So I'm going to now start painting in the stripes. You can see I kind of didn't bother doing the whole of his back because I'm going to come in with some yellow. It's going to go down the centre of his tail. I think he's got some on the arms and the legs as well. So let's get cracking. So for that yellow, I'm going to start off with some yellow ochre, which is a nice dark yellow. Now hopefully I'm going to be able to paint over the red without too much problem. If it is too dark, then I could always go in and paint it white and then yellow, but I think I'm probably going to get away with it actually. So this is going to take a little while to mark out all the areas I want to do, but as I say, just follow some reference material and hopefully I can't go too wrong. So with all the yellow mapped out on each of the pieces, it's now time to run a wash over that. So I've mixed up a little bit of Gorgon brown and a little bit of leather brown and made a wash. So about 50-50 on each one of those, and then a whole bunch of water. And this is just going to go all over those yellow parts, just to try and bring in some shadows. Now with that brown wash dried in, you can see there's a little bit of depth now in those colours. Makes them look a little bit more realistic. So like we did with the red fur, I'm going to do a dry brush over this, but this time I'm going to use some moon yellow, and I'm going to take a smaller dry brush here just to make sure I don't go too mad and get it all over the red. And you can see it'll just start to brighten up a little bit, take that yellow up a notch. Now it's time to block in the last sort of the main area on him, which is all the skin. So for this I'm going to use Sandry Dust, which I think is a fairly close colour to what we see in the cartoon. So it's sort of this browny tan colour. So this is going to take a little while. You're going to have to do obviously his hands, his feet, his face and his ears as well. But this should make a big difference when we come back. And this is how it's looking after that Sandry Dust has been applied. Now, the last of the main base colours I'm going to use onto the face here, and that is going to be using a touch of Moorcast Bone. So that's the all across the whiskers, I guess. Then it's a dry brush of Bone White all over that. And just as we've done before, just going across the model and picking up the raised edges. Taking some Nuln Oil, I'm now just going to run a recess shade into each of the folds of the skin, and I'll just give it a little bit of depth. Next I'm going to take some soft pastel. Now I'm just taking plain old black pastel, and I'm going to work it across the skin parts and mostly try and sort of build in some shadows. So for example, do it around in between the toes, try and get some a little bit on the toenails, and just anywhere, any sort of folds and creases, just to bring out that detail. Can't really go too wrong with this. It's kind of like a very easy hack really. Time to put a bit of life into his face now by painting in the eyes. To start with, I'm going to use some Deck Tan. I'm just going to do the whites of the eyes. Okay, that's then followed up with some Chicaro Orange. That is then followed with some black, just doing a sharp line down each one. And then finally, using some bold titanium white, just do a spot of white in the corner of each eye, just to simulate a bit of reflection. Now then, for the base, as you can see, I primed it black, which is going to help me with all the shadows, because it means all the recesses are already painted in. All I've done is put some little pads on the bottom, just to finish that off and make it a little bit more stable. So to paint it up, the first thing I'm going to do is a dry brush using some leather brown. I want to do a nice sort of light brown to tan look for the base this time around. So there's lots of nice texture on here. So what I need to do is take some of that paint, get most of it off using some kitchen towel, and then once you're happy with how much is being left behind, so it's going to be a fairly heavy dry brush to start with. It's just a case of then going across the whole model. So after that first dry brush, this is the effect we are left with. Now what I'm going to do is a second dry brush. This time I'm going to use Parasite Brown, which is kind of a orangey brown. And I'm only going to do this fairly selectively. So whereas before I covered the entire thing, what I just want to do here is just build up sort of slight differences in colour in certain areas. So just to sort of give it a bit more of a natural look. Break it up a little bit so it's not all just one colour. Now I'm going to follow that same process again. This time I'm going to change up the colour completely to a dark green, and again even be more selective this time than I was before. Just giving it a bit of a tint here and there. I'm going to take up the colour a little bit now with Sandry Dust. So again, another dry brush and fairly selective where I put this. And after that final dry brushing, here is the finished result. So I think it looks pretty good, nice and simple. And with that done, I can now put the rest of the model together and I can come back and show you the finished result. So here he is, all nice and finished. Now, nice little model this one. It took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to on the actual paint job. I think it's because there was a lot of freehanding needed to put in all the stripes. Obviously painting yellow is never an easy colour, you often have to do several coats. So yeah, although he's a little model, there is quite a bit to actually do on him, and some of the areas are actually quite tricky to reach. So yeah, it's deceptively more complicated than it might initially look. I'm pretty pleased with him. I think the sculpt is absolutely bang on. LA figures do such good work, and this is just another example of that. And I think he's going to look really good in the collection of previous Thundercat models I've already done. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of that. We're doing well on the old subscribers. I'm almost at 1,000, so if you would consider subscribing, if you like what you see, then please go ahead. I would much appreciate it. So take care everyone, and I will see you in the next one.